many of us think that our history started with slavery. However, they don't tell you that in 1492, the same year that Christopher Columbus discovered America, that the Spaniards overthrew the Moorish stronghold Granada and expelled the Moors out of Spain. And I mean, if you put two and two together and read between the lines, there's no way that that can be a coincidence. You know, and they don't tell you that in 711, the Moors crossed the Gibraltar Strait.
Rock of Gibraltar.
You know, the Rock of Gibraltar. They crossed that strait into Europe and controlled Spain, Italy, Ireland, and many other lands for 700 years. And the end of that reign in Spain was in 1492. And they also, I mean, if you look at any nationality other than African American, I mean, but African American really isn't a nationality. If you look at any other so-called race or group of people, then everyone can trace their lineage back to a nation. You know, German, Russian, can tell you, and that's something that's been stripped from us. And we took on basically descriptions that basically describe us in relation to Europeans, rather than describing us as we would describe ourselves. Like if you go to China, they're not calling themselves yellow people. They're not calling themselves, you know what I mean? Any land you go to, they're not defining their self and their identity by, like, in regards to an outsider or in regards to an oppressor or a colonizer, unless they've been colonized and gone through the same conditions that we've gone through. Another figure that I wanted to bring up is Joseph Sinkek. He's also known as Sinkek Pie, but he was the leader of a slave uprising in which the Cuban ship, the Amistad, was overthrown and killed most of the people who were on the ship, everybody except for the navigator of the ship. And they basically told him to sail the ship back to Africa. But that never happened, and a Navy ship ended up intercepting the ship, and they put Sinkek Pie on trial for murder. And the former president, John Quincy Adams, actually defended him in the U.S. Supreme Court. And it was ruled that although slavery is legal in Cuba, it is illegal for them to import slaves from Africa. And because of that fact, it was ruled that anything that they did in order to escape captivity was basically necessary and was legal in the eyes of the law, because being that it was illegal to import them from Africa, they were kidnapped. They were technically kidnapped, and that's what they said in the court. And he was basically exonerated of all charges, and they were sent back home to the motherland. Other talk is something that one of my teachers taught me, and it's basically a little the Philippines. My teacher was Filipino, and the class was psychic relations. And what he said is the Philippines is a chain of islands. Like three. However, the Spaniards never put more than 5,000 soldiers on the ground at one time, ever in their whole time in the Philippines. But over the Philippines, and this was because the Filipino children were being educated by the Spaniards. And they were being indoctrinated into Christianity and basically gave up all of their original beliefs, all of the idea of kapwa, which basically means that an individual cannot be separated from the multitude. Similar idea, and it is basically the same thing. But we've been stripped of that idea. We've been stripped of everything people in terms of identity, and we've taken on ideas of self and the European ideals of individualism rather than being together and cohesive, and not really putting yourself before the collective interests of the people. And for that reason, we have sellouts today. We have different people in governmental positions who won't take a stand for real issues. You know what I mean? Like they'll talk about legalizing weed before they talk about real issues, like police brutality. And it's a gang of different issues that they need to talk about, but we can't leave it to them. It's up to us to do what we have to do to ensure that what's important to us gets done. We can't pray that it gets done. We can't hope that it gets done. We can't go petition the mayor and the board of supervisors so that it can get done. What we have to do is we have to roll up our sleeves and we got to put in the work, whatever work that we would put in a 9-to-5 job or anything else, we have to put in that same work toward building something for us. And we can't keep leaving it up to someone else, because by doing that, we're giving them the power to determine our destiny. And Marcus Garvey, who was a great leader that they don't talk about in school, he basically, his biggest thing was he wanted us as a people to be able to control our own destiny. Nowadays, all the so-called community leaders and different people from different organizations, all they want to do is go to City Hall and talk about what the mayor is doing, or talk about what Malia Cohen, the supervisor, is doing. But they never hold themselves accountable. If you come up with sustainable solutions, they shoot them down and tell you, oh no, we need to go to City Hall and talk to them. It's stuff that we could be doing right now. If we focusing all our energy on City Hall and focusing all our energy on something other than us, how are we supposed to build something for ourselves? You know, we need to be using that energy in a positive way. They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. I mean, we've been marching and protesting and holding signs for 50 years. What change has that brought? You know, I mean, I think it was Asada Shakur who said, you can get nowhere from, I'm paraphrasing, but you can get nowhere from appealing to the moral conscience of someone who doesn't have a moral conscience. You know, I mean, and we have to be real and, you know, authentic and really look at the issues and look at what's going on. And by looking at what's going on, we have to be honest with ourselves, honest with the youth, honest with everyone about who's for us and who's not for us. And you know what I mean? Because we can't keep chasing our own tail like a dog. Or we can't just get on the hamster wheel, you know what I mean, and never progress. It's a lot of people who are put in different positions and they're paid by governments, they're paid by rich people, lobbyists, and etc. to keep us from progressing. And they're put in different positions in different organizations. You know, it's a bunch of nonprofit organizations, and they really don't represent the best interests of the people. Like we have this organization, Choo Choo, which is a housing organization, but they've been illegally evicting American families at a ridiculous rate.
Wow.
And we have different community organizations who work right hand in hand with them. And they talk about combating gentrification and they talk about all these other issues. If you don't stand for something, then you fall for anything. And that's what these organizations are doing. We have organizations that are supposed to stand up for us to get jobs as a people. However, those same organizations will ensure that a community-based business that's owned by people that look like us doesn't get contracts because they get paid by these European contractors who come in, maybe from Sacramento or from wherever, and pay them off to basically keep the community off their backs. And, you know, they maybe give them maybe a handful of labor jobs, holding signs. But in the grand scheme of things, what is a sign holding job going to teach you? You can't hold signs for yourself. You can't start a sign holding company. You know what I mean? So they're basically trying to keep us out of the skilled trades and working with the government to continue the discrimination against the people. But we must realize as a people that in our own communities, we have the power. The ball is in our court. You know what I mean? What we say goes. All we have to do is get like-minded people, get together, unify around real issues, and come to grips with real solutions. Like one time, I think it was Unity Housing. They discriminated against my mother getting her paint contract. And they didn't even tell us why we didn't get the job or anything. But one of these community organizations was up there, and they were basically trying to shut down our demonstration when we were telling them that our company was being discriminated against. And they were playing the buffer to keep us from communicating directly with the contractor or with the people who assign the contracts. You know what I mean? Trying to be their bodyguard. But we shut down the job for a few hours, and a few hours later they signed over a $300,000 contract. You know what I mean? So it's all about using our power, our brains for stuff that we can do. Like we can use our power and our energy and our brains to petition the government, or we can use our power, our energy, our brains to do all these different things. But it's things that we can do ourselves, and we don't need anyone else. You know what I mean? And that's what we need to focus our energy and our, you know, our brain power, our muscle, etc. We need to focus in the direction of the things that we can do without government help or without any other marginalized group co-sign. You know what I mean? And if we don't do that, then we won't see progress. And that's period point blank. It's just like Joseph Sinke. You know, he did what he had to do in order to get out of captivity. But he didn't petition the government first. I mean, after they took him into custody, he went on trial. But he didn't wait for someone else to liberate him. You know what I mean? And that's how we have to move. We have to be self-sufficient. We have to be self-determined. And we have to control our own destiny.
You had spoke a little bit on Garvey. Can you speak more about Garvey's vision was about? Because a lot of people think it's just a back to Africa vision.
Yeah, Marcus Garvey, he wasn't about moving the people back to Africa. Like we had W.E.B. Du Bois, who was against Marcus Garvey initially, but at the end of his life, he changed his position. You know, but he was basically against W.E.B. Du Bois was against us going back to Africa as a people. And I sort of understand his position and can agree with him to an extent. However, he didn't fully understand Marcus Garvey's vision, which was not just to send us back to Africa. Marcus Garvey's vision was more so to connect the resources of Africa with America and have us be in control of the resources of Africa and bring the dollar to help build Africa up and to build and using the resources of Africa to build us in America. And that was what Marcus Garvey was about, self-determination. And I mean, self-determination may sound like it means one thing, like just to be determined yourself, but that's not what self-determination means. Self-determination is pledging allegiance to the government of your choice, to the nation of your choice, and being able to choose which nation you pledge allegiance to. It's about nationhood and building a nation. We need to build our own nation. We don't have to pledge allegiance to the American flag that, you know, and these same people that have terrorized us and continue to terrorize our communities today. You know what I mean? If the United States was everything it was cracked up to be, we wouldn't have, you know what I mean? We wouldn't have Trayvon's. We wouldn't have Mike Brown's. We wouldn't have Kenneth Hardin. And we would have equality. We wouldn't have marginalized people. We wouldn't have people in Hunters Point who can't even get a job rebuilding their own houses. what I mean? We wouldn't be discriminated against if it stood for what it really is supposed to, what they claim is supposed to stand for.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I mean, that's not the case. And we need to really be honest with ourselves and honest with our children to where we don't continue going and chasing our own tails like a dog.
It was, there's another thing too, and maybe you can connect the dots too as well, because you brought up contractors, and we were also talking a little bit about Garvey, and Garvey was into the unions too, as well, and I think that all kind of coincided like with his vision of doing trade in Africa as well. And can you speak to like the power of unions and a little bit of the history and the impact of unions today? Because you also have experience with unions yourself.
Yeah, I've had experience with unions, but from my experience, I mean, they've done positive things for me, but in the grand scheme of things, I haven't seen the unions really like rallying behind our issues. Every once in a while, we get a few unions that might do something just to make themselves look good or to, you know, but I mean, ILWU, the longshoremen, union, they for Oscar Grant, you know, and it's different done positive things. SEIU, they put on the front like they represent the best interests of the people because they have a lot of people in their union who, you know, they're not, you know, middle class. They're basically right along with us. Put a front like they're actually for progress and for change in order to members happy with. But a lot of these different organizations that I see aren't really for that. And the union I work for, the painters union, they're not really for us. You know, they'll do more trying to come down on our company than actually advocating for it. You know what I mean? Like they've never come out and tried to help us get a job that we might have been discriminated against on. They've never done anything for us but collective dues. And that's just my experience with the union.
Well, see, that's an interesting thing right there because, you know, Garvey was trying to start his own union. It sounds like we need something to advocate for us. And then another thing is the city, too. And sometimes, well, like you just said, we're in bed with the city.
This is how you say unions have power. The company that we had to go and protest was a non-union company from Sacramento doing a city job. You know, and we're a union company. We painted this library that we're sitting in right now. So we're definitely qualified, you know, but we have people with money and we have people without money. And that's what controls what's going on. You know what I mean? It's not the unions, because the unions go right along with the people with money. You know what I mean?
So it's
but I mean, if we were to start our own union,
right, like Garvey,
a union with integrity, a union that was actually founded in order to change these issues, like we could use like a fast food workers union or a retail workers union. And if we created something like that, then we could see an impact. But as long as we're pledging to these other people's unions, which don't really represent our best interests. They might make sure that we get a certain wage every hour, or you know what I mean, we get unemployment benefits and workers' compensation, but they're not really looking out for our, you know, our best interest. And even if you're out of work, they just want their union dues. You know what I mean? They're not trying to get you a job. You know, so how did they earn those union dues that you're paying?
So, are there corporations that's behind the scenes influencing these unions?
Oh, it's all kind of things influencing these unions. And just like we have the Cahill Corporation, who was doing the construction up in West Point, and put a restraining order on me when I asked them how many entry-level apprentices have been hired on the job. You know, anyone who tries to hold them accountable. And they called the police and put a restraining order on them. The union didn't come out and say, okay, they're supposed to hire from the neighborhood, or, you know what I mean? They're not trying to hold these people with money accountable. And that's the whole issue, is accountability. San Francisco has no compliance officer to ensure that local people get hired, or to ensure that African Americans get hired in different positions. You know, we have legislation that says that it's supposed to happen, but that's just like having cocaine laws and no police to enforce it, or gun laws and no police to enforce it. The criminals gonna do what they do, you know. And just like how we have the police and no police to police them. They gonna do what they do because you know it's no one to hold them accountable.
Interesting. So, so would you say that corporations are controlling cities?
I definitely say that corporations control the whole government. Whether we're looking at banks, we looking at these big construction companies, we looking at Uber or Twitter or Facebook. You know, Ed Lee gave Twitter a huge tax break to relocate to San Francisco. You know what I mean? He gave them free buses to transport them to Silicon Valley. You know what I mean? We can't even get free buses to downtown trying to get a job. If we unemployed, how are we supposed to pay $2 to get on the train and go look for a job that we probably won't even get still? You know, they're not looking out for us. They're looking out for the big corporations, and that's because the big corporations have the campaign contributions to make sure they continue their political careers and everything else. You know?
Like that's why we need to be more grassroots.
Yeah, I'm still moving on it.
That's why we can't depend on government officials. We can't depend on different organizations who are controlled by government officials and controlled by the government, because nobody's going to bite the hand that feeds you. They might talk the talk, but when it really comes down accountable to the issues, that really comes down to creating sustainable solutions, they're missing in action, because their whole job security relies on there being issues and there being disproportionate people who are unemployed in our community versus Pacific Heights or African Caucasians or Europeans. In order for them to have something to and to pretend that they're actually for our best interest. to make it seem like they represent, so they'll have a big rally, like they have a rally out to the street. But about that, right? But the whole protest was escorted by the police. So like even their actions contradict themselves at times, and pretty much all the time. You know what I mean? It's like, how you gonna have the dude that's killing people that you're protesting? How you gonna have them leading your protest? And the main thing is we can't allow the oppressor or the government or anybody else to dictate how we want to, address our own issues. We can't. It's like, say I'm at the top, and I decide, okay, ever be the king of this room, you have to do this, this, and this, and this. And if you don't go through these avenues, then you can never be king, or you can never rise up. You know what I mean? I would obviously, if I was a selfish person like that, I would set rules in place to where these avenues, will never get you to my position, because I need to stay in my position at the top, right? At the top of the pyramid. So it's the same thing with the government. If they're not going to co-sign anything that's going to take them out of power. Period, point blank. They're not going to co-sign anything that's going to hold them accountable for their actions.
Right, because when people become more self-reliant, the need for government decreases. The need for their jobs decreases. Mm-hmm. But I got a question for you, because you spoke on some things like that the schools aren't teaching that we need, that we should know. And you spoke on California getting named after a black woman. One of them was, you said there's pictures and statues in different places. The Queen Khalifa, that's honoring her. So could you speak to why the schools don't teach them, why we don't hear this a lot, and then also what areas do depict Queen Khalifa's? That's a two-part question.
It's like El Malik El Shabazz and Malcolm X said. Only the school would allow its enemy to teach its children. So of course they're going to teach us that our history started with slavery. They'll be quick to teach you that Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492, but they won't tell you what else happened in that year. You know what I mean? And like in Columbus's journal, basically on the first page, he talks about when the Moors were expelled from Spain. But they don't even teach you that. You know what I mean? And it's not a coincidence that in 1492, the Moors were expelled from Spain and Christopher Columbus reached the Americas. They don't even teach you that it was a Moor that navigated them to the Americas. Because we were already here. We were already taking trips back and forth. So.
Speak to elaborate on that some though, a little bit before we get to the next speaker.
The National Geographic did a study where they got archaeologists and everything, and they dug up 50,000 years worth of sediment, and are basically the equivalent to basically everyday sediment is laid out on the ground, basically, and it builds up. And over 50,000 years, it'll be a certain amount of sediment, you know what I mean, that builds up and creates what we call dirt and creates the landmass as we know it. So they dug down what would be equivalent to 50,000 years deep in the Americas. And the bones that they found were so-called Africoid, you know, and their skulls were shaped like our skulls, and their facial features were like our facial features, you know. So, and basically anywhere you go on this planet, that's the case, because we were the original man. And just like how they teach about Pangea, we were all over Pangea. You know, all the continents were connected at the time. You know what I mean? So, but they don't want us to know that. They want us to think that our history started with slavery, so that we can have the inferiority complex to always want to depend on them. You know, so we'll never bite the hand that feeds. You know, so we'll never know that we were great at one time and that we ruled the whole earth at one time. You know, and actually civilized the Europeans and got them out of the Dark Ages. And you know, they had the Black Death and everything because they weren't taking the proper care of themselves. They weren't, you know, in tune with their hygiene and everything else. You know what I mean? With taking care of their hygiene, taking baths. They were eating each other. You know, they didn't know what love was. They beat a woman and that's how they so-called make love or whatever. You know what I mean? They didn't know what love was until we introduced the concept to it.
That's why in Spanish, the word for love is amor.
Amor.
Oh, wow.
So we were, because in Europe, you know, you had this thing with, you know, ladies, you know, tall, dark, and handsome, and you know, these things with ladies, men, and stuff like that. So we were the ones that basically brought the ladies' man concept to Europe.
They also didn't know, I mean, what they also don't teach us, that the first slaves were Slavs, which is where they got the word slave from. Because the Slavs, they had, you know, they couldn't grow food in their environment, so they would sell their women to the Moors in order to get food and sustenance. You know what I mean?
Excuse me, who was that? The Slavs?
Czechoslovakia.
Who?
Slavs.
Czechoslovakia.
Oh.
Czechoslovakia.
Those are the original slaves, and that's where the term comes from. We were never slaves. We were, you know, prisoners of war. We were captives.
So what you're saying in Africa didn't have, was enslaving their own people?
I won't say they weren't enslaving their own people, but it was, the thing is, when they started bringing us on ships to the Americas, what was going on there and what was going on here was like night and day. See, back in Africa, the concept of slavery and servitude, and you would be a slave servant for a certain period of time until you repaid the wealth that you owed, the debt that you owed to whoever. And slavery was never based on a complexion or based on how much melanin you had or whatever. It was based on you owning something. You know, but once they brought us to the Americas, after the Spaniards overthrew the Moors' rule, they based slavery on a complexion and how dark you were. You know what I mean? And that was the first time in history that slavery has been defined in those terms.
And then, like another misnomer is, is that Africa sold Africans into slavery. I mean, which is true to a point, but there's 54 different countries in Africa. So it's like, which country are you talking about? There is particular countries, and then those countries were basically trading off enemy territories.
And then we gotta also look at the history. Like, it's hard for you to really wrap your head around different societies and different times because we've only lived in our time. We've only lived in the Americas at this time in this age. But when you try to really like understand what was going on in history, you have to look at the big picture. You can't just look at a small detail like, oh, they sold their people into slavery. We have to also look at the fact that the Europeans have had guns. So a lot of these nations and etc. felt they needed guns in order to protect themselves from the Europeans, from other tribes that were being sold guns, from other nations that were being sold guns. So they basically traded slaves for these guns. And the Europeans didn't want to trade anything other than slaves for their guns. They wouldn't trade their guns for anything other than slaves. So they felt like they needed these guns in order to protect themselves. So they'd sell some of them. They took captive from another tribe or whatever, a prisoner of war. They'd sell them to the Europeans.
But they would never sell somebody from their tribe or even somebody that was in servitude. They would always sell somebody that's from a warring tribe. That's the enemy anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was no way to know whether they knew the concept of slavery that the Europeans were practicing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no way to know whether they knew that this person that you're selling into slavery and their children and their children's children will be born into that same fate. And they would never be able to repay the so-called debt. What's that?
It's not pertaining to this. Sorry, that it's kind of.
All right, so what y'all think about the event so far?
All it means, it's some information that we need more.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're going to have some more speakers that are coming in. QEMC is supposed to come in. We're going to talk about the history of hip-hop and how originally hip-hop was basically to combat the social issues that we have in our community and to fight for power. But nowadays, hip-hop is being used for basically commercial issues and everything. And hip-hop, when it was originated, was like a community thing. It wasn't about money at all. Like, you ever heard of Sugar Hill Gang? They're called basically pioneers of hip-hop. But the big dude, what's the big dude's name in that group?
Talking about one big bang.
Big Hank.
Yeah.
See, he stole somebody's lines to use in that song.
He stole Cash's rhymes.
Grandmother Cash.
Yeah, he used to manage the Village School
Yeah.
before he got with the Sugar Hill Gang. As far as hip hop is concerned, when the Zulu Nation converted from being the black stage, which was the largest street gang in New York, this is when New York City went broke. Garbage strikes everywhere. They were having blackouts. There was no money in New York City whatsoever. It was the largest city in the country, and it was broke. The black stage was the largest gang in New York, about 250,000 strong. From that point, African Mubala decided to, basically, they just called their own dream. And from then, they turned the black stage into the Zulu Nation. And Kool Herc, who was a reggae DJ, is the absolute godfather as far as the whole music, the breakdance, the beats, rapping. Even though rapping itself as an art form has been in play before hip hop. The first rap I ever heard was "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud" by James Brown, and that was in 1971, 72. And at the time, it was getting blow flop that it was rappers. If you look at rap as a whole, but as a movement, hip hop was started by the black stage with Zulu Nation. And it wasn't until '79 you heard your first hip hop record, which was rappers to like. But the movement as a whole, as far as stopping the violence and using artistic means to communicate, which was where the breakdancing came in. Instead of fighting, crews would battle each other dancing. And all this from hot wiring light poles in New York City street corners. We have a multi-billion-dollar industry now that's giving negative messages to our children because the people that control the media now also are very invested in privatized prisons.
Right. You see what's interesting about that was Dr. Phil Valentine. He was speaking on how he said they allow our generation or the younger generation to sample music without being charged, just so they can push their agenda of promoting negativity eventually. And because if you look at it, James Brown is the most sampled artist in history, right? And when music was first popping up, I mean, if you look at Dr. Dre's album, The Chronic, there's like a lot of sample material. Like it's really, it's a combination of hip hop and funk. They call it G-funk. But now you look at it today, man, they tax you, they fine you for sampling. So it was an interesting thing how they let us sample our elders, and now they're making a lot of money off of it.
Well, it was also our elders who complained because here's the thing. When it comes to black music, we've always been with it. In the 50s when rock and roll came out and it was our music, because they wouldn't put our records on these crossover pop stations, they would have people like Pat Boone and Paul Anka who made a living just covering black songs, doing a white version of these songs. And the people the black people that wrote these songs, they weren't getting royalties, they weren't getting writers' credits under the publishing of these songs. But it's amazing how many record label owners back then were making so much. They were making way more money off of us back then than they were now. But it was just the fact that so many black artists and their families had to sue these people for the publishing rights of this music. And then when it came to hip hop, and that's another thing about hip hop, we didn't have our own records to rap over. We used our parents' records.
Right.
Okay, so whatever breaks, and that was the beautiful thing about music in the 70s, because it was all mostly instrumentation. You know, an album could be like 6 or 7 songs long, and each song would be 10 to 15 minutes long. So you had a lot of parts in a song where there was just breaks, you know, where you gave the drummer some, you gave the bass some, the horn section got in. So basically, you had guys like Herc and Grandmaster Flash that could mix those breaks back and forth. So cats could rap and break dance. So when it came into the studio, basically we took those same records that they took the breaks out in the parties and they sampled it. Now, I was there when Chuck D got hit with a $400,000 lawsuit by Polygram after A Nation of Millions Hold His Back came out. They sued him $400,000 for all those James Brown samples that he did use. You know what I'm saying? And then what caused insult to injury, Russell Simmons, after he pays the money, strikes a distribution deal with Polygram, taking Def Jam from Columbia to Polygram. And Chuck D's like, well, hell, tell them to give me my damn money back then. Since they're going to be distributing my music and they have a hold of my catalog. But that was where the rift started within Def Jam. You know, just for the simple fact that a lot of these artists, you know, soon as they went after all these white, you know, record labels and publishing companies that weren't giving them their money, you know, when the kids started using their records and not paying for it, yeah, they went after them too. Because you also have to remember, in the beginning, a lot of our elders didn't like rap music. If anybody hated rap music worse than white people, it was older black people. They couldn't stand it at all. Most of them still can't. And I understand what they can't stand now as far as how the music's being used and exploited now. You know, it is our worst nightmare. But before, when it first came out, you know, people that hated rap music worse than white folks was my grandmother.
Something funny, right? Chris Rock, he said, man, back in the day, you used to defend hip hop. Now, some of this stuff, you can't even defend today. We showed you the transition, which you were talking about, where it's gotten today. You know?
Well, the thing about it is, one of the things I found is even though there's nothing but garbage getting played on the radio, when I look at the sales, the ones that are getting the most sales are the Kendrick Lamars and the J. Coles and the Wale's, not Bobby Shmurda. Not all these trap dudes. All, you know, that's what we're getting shoved down our throat. But at the end of the day, because it's because of the internet, we do have a lot more access to a lot of information, a lot of art forms, and a lot of people, and some of us at an early age see through the garbage that they're trying to spew on us. I mean, you know, a lot of us know that the difference between the cold rain and warm urine going down our back. You know what I'm saying?
I had a classmate.
Now, let me switch to momentum and everything, and turn up my father because he wants to talk about community activism in San Francisco and basically his point and basically the history of it and how we need to be moving forward in order to actually progress rather than go in circles. And this is Paul Carpenter Sr.
Yes. First, I'd like to compliment some of the things my son brought to our attention about history. You know, because I think it's important for us to understand where we came from.
That should be true.
Then we understand where we came from in order to know where we're going. And to say that, and I just want to stress that when we have a meeting to present anything, we have to have a strategy of where we're going to go next. It just can't be a one-time shot. So when it comes to our history, I think that it's something that we need to incorporate in our future meetings. But I also think that we need to get down to what we're dealing with today and how we can address it. I believe people is power. And what I'm feeling is the ones in this room with the talents they possess, we need to be considering how we're going to leave this meeting and come back to the next meeting and bring more people with us. You know? So what that means is we always have to have a strategy of where we're going next, what's going to be our next step. I just like to share some background. I was born in Bayview Hunters Point back in 1945. So I understand what San Francisco is doing. From seeing it, Bayview when it was a dominantly white community, because when I came here, it was dominantly white. It was just a small minority of blacks, and we stayed in segregated neighborhoods. So it shows what they're doing is they're taking the neighborhood back. And my attitude about it is we need to be thinking about that. And how we, that has a desire to stay in the city, how are we gonna go about it? Because neighborhoods are according to income brackets. And when they raise the income of this neighborhood, we won't stay here unless we have a means of sustaining ourselves, upgrading our economical standards, and this, that, and that. And this is something that I was working on when I first started having meetings in the library back in the 70s. And what we were doing, we were talking about what the city planned to do with this neighborhood and how we were going to fit in, you know. And what that did, that enabled us to go off in different careers. And the careers were careers where we can afford to buy a house in this neighborhood if we chose to. Also, careers that we wasn't allowed to be in. We wasn't allowed to be painters when I was coming up. We were only allowed to be laborers, you know, landscapers. Those are the fields that they allowed us to participate in. So our ambition was to become craftsmen, become nurses, become supervisors or whatever. I mean, like, you know, to do things, to prepare ourselves to do things that was going to enable us to be able to buy a home in the community if we chose to. Okay. So in order for us to do that, we had to know what the city was going to do and make sure that whatever they was going to do, we had an opportunity to be a part of it. We just can't let them do what they want to do with Hunters Point, but yet us not being involved. Okay? So what I'm getting at is that through learning what was going on, it also showed that they didn't have no intentions of including us. I mean, that was obvious to us. Because when they closed down the shipyard, a lot of our parents became unemployed for the first time. They were decent, hardworking people while they were working in the shipyard. But once that shipyard closed down, that's when the unemployment rate began to rise in our community. So what we had to do is figure out a way how to become employed and not wait for them to do something for us. We had to come up with our own strategy. We had to come up with our own plan. And the way we did it is by organizing together. Just like right now, this what you see sitting here right now. You know, my son talking about history and also talking about how they control us. Because the whole slavery was about control. And they still have control over us today. Because we're not planning our own future. We're not planning what we want for our own children. We're sitting back while they're controlling everything. Just like my son said about the union. I see fewer black people in the union than was in the union when I got in the 70s. There were more craftsmen back then in the 70s than we have today that are black. And there's a reason for that. Because as we learned our trade, it also gave us the ability to train our own people. If my son is a painter, it ain't no coincidence. Because we own our own construction company that enable us to be able to train our children and other people in the neighborhood that are journeyman painters that we're not even related to, but we trained, male and female. Okay, now that's falling on the wayside. Why? Because they are afraid of us waking up, taking control of our own destiny, training our own people, having our own businesses, and this, that, and the other. That's a threat. Why? Because if we wake our people up, we can control our own destiny. We can control our own economical resources and everything else that comes along with it. There's more than just one family business. Frisco Fried is a family business. BNC Painting and Decorating is a family business. And what I'm saying is when we set out to start these businesses, it wasn't personal. We came up with a strategy that we needed to educate our people too, that there's no limit to what we can do. Now, everybody's not listening. Everybody's not moving in the right direction. Back then, we had 3 generations of welfare recipients. We changed that. We broke the mold. Right now, in our family alone, I don't know, we have at least 8 painters, journeymen, craftsmen. We have children that are muni supervisors. We have family members that are licensed nurses. Because there's no one area that we need to advance in. We need to advance in every area. And we need to advance because it gives us an opportunity to set an example for the generation coming up under us. It's sad being a people with nothing to look up to and nothing to look forward to. In order for us to have something to look up for, we have to have a strategy that's going to put us in a position worthy of the younger generation looking up to us and having a desire to want to do what we do. Instead of just gangbangers, ballers, all these bad examples for our people. You know, we need the good examples, and we need to know that we do have something inside us that gives us what I call self-esteem. No matter what the obstacles are, we can achieve the goals that we set out to achieve. We can manifest it in our mind what we want to do, and we can achieve that. Okay? And that's where businesses come from. Our business started in 1984. It still exists today. That's 30-something years. But we had to think about that business. We had to first learn our trade. Didn't have a desire to start a business. Okay? So what I'm saying is we are capable. There's nothing that we cannot achieve. We have to have that self-confidence. We have to be confident that we can achieve what we want to do and put no limit on it. Okay? Now, when my son was talking about the history, that's why he was bringing up the history, because we need to know where we come from. We come from a proud, educated people, no matter what we've been subjected to. The only thing is, in order for us to achieve something, we first have to believe it. It has to be inside us that we believe that nobody is no better than we are. I was trained by a white company. The white company is one of the most prejudiced companies in the Bay Area. They trained me and his mother. Trained us very well. They actually thought that we would work for them till we retired. Because we were like their Negroes that they had for their company. Okay. we decided that we wanted to quit and start our own company. And when we did that, then all of a sudden, it was like, I can't stand him. He got his nerve. We trained him, made him a foreman, gave him his own truck, and he quit and started his own business. It's like, I can't stand him. Now, when he's looking in my face, they're smiling at me. It's like, oh yeah, we trained him. I'm like, well, I sure appreciate the training that you gave me. But when they turn their back and walk away, they say, I can't stand him. But, through what I seen, their father started the company. His name was W.G. Thompson. He started the company, then his kid took over. I don't know how many $1 million company. It's a big company today. But it started from their father. The thought crossed in my mind, I can start my own company. If they can do it, I can do it. And I did it. Now this is what I'm saying. This is the self-esteem that we have to have. And what we have to do, we have to bring more people in to inspire them. That you don't have to sit and wait for somebody to do something for them. I see people in this community that's on the welfare. They're being told, don't worry, they're gonna build a new community, but you're gonna be able to have your house. Because it's gonna be a mixed community, all different income brackets. So you're gonna have a spot. And they sitting there believing that. They believe, oh, I can stay on the welfare and I can remain in this community. That is not true. The reason why I'm saying it is neighborhoods are according to income brackets. So when you change the income bracket of the neighborhood, if the people don't upgrade their economical standards, the whole makeup is going to change. People with money is going to move in, and that's going to automatically force low-income people out. So the point I'm saying is no way we can be here and see all of this stuff going on and don't understand what the final results are going to be. We have time. We have time to prepare our people. We have time to upgrade our economical standards. But we can't do that if we can't obtain the jobs that it's going to take to build a community to where it can force us out. We have to become the builders. We have to become the contractors. We have to become the entrepreneurs. We have to become the restaurant owners. And in order for us to do that, we have to see the money that it's going to take for them to build it, where they're going to put us out, and we have to connect to that money. That's called economical development. We have to tap into the financial resources. Why? Because we are entitled, because they're going to do it in our neighborhood. So that means that we are entitled to be a part of it. But if we can't come up with a strategy where we can connect to that money, and don't ask for an opportunity, demand it, because we are entitled to it. You can't come in somebody's territory and do whatever you want to do without taking the people that live in the territory in consideration. But as long as we sit back and allow them to have their way, we are not going to be able to tap the resources. My attitude about economical development, if we can put our people to work on building their community and they return their dollars back over in their community, every dollar they earn is going to multiply to become $5 before it goes back out in the community. That's what economical development is all about. But we have to be smart enough to have our plan on terms of what we want and how we going to go about it. We have to educate our people to what economical development is and how it works, not only in our community, how it works in any community, how it works in the Jewish community, how it works in the Chinese community, how it works in the mission district, and it can work the same way in Hunters Point. But we have to adopt that plan of economical development. We have to start educating brothers and sisters. It's not about talking about the side of your neck, thinking because I have a piece of gold on my wrist or I have a chain around my neck that I'm all of that. because it's not the truth. It shows low self-esteem. To be all of that is to have it in your heart that my people is worth standing up for. My people is worth fighting for. And my people is worth dying for. And that is something to inspire the young people, to inspire the sisters, that we all created equal, we all together. We have to stop bringing each other down and start lifting each other up. And what I'm saying, they named the street after me called Carpenter Court, where they had those new homes. And the reason why they named that street after me, because I started letting the construction companies know and the developers know, you won't develop or build anything without including us. Without including us, and started putting our people to work in their own neighborhood. And that's why the street is named after me. I was a volunteer. This was something over 40 years ago when this happened. But what I'm saying is we had a plan then. And what the city did is they pitted everybody against us because they knew that if they allowed us to execute our strategy, we will own this community. Money talk, bullshit walk.
Yeah.
We have to come up with how we gonna get the money. And our way of getting it. I don't mean stealing, I don't mean killing. It's not about I set something aside for you. You go to any other neighborhood, you don't have to set nothing aside. If you're gonna come in their neighborhood, you're gonna benefit them. Other than that, you don't come. And that's the attitude we gotta take. Someone with nothing to lose and everything to gain. That's the attitude we gotta have. What do we have to lose? We don't have nothing, but we have everything to gain. But we have to have a plan. We have to have a strategy. And the reason why I'm saying it, I don't like going nowhere to no meetings. And we ain't talking about where we go from here. When we walk out of this meeting, where are we going? Or what did we take out of this meeting to take home? Because we should take something home, and when we come back to the next meeting, bring somebody else with us. People is power. The more people we can get together, the more powerful we become. We also have to have a conversation. You go to somewhere for lunch and they feed you and you get food. We need to be able to go to a meeting and get inspired to where I'm sitting in the meeting, I'm listening to a talk, but I got something going up in here to take home with me, and I'm coming back. Why? Because I was fed mentally. Someone gave me something that inspired me that I can start telling others how we can get the money, how we can have power, our own power, Black people power, and how we have to stop waiting for somebody to do something for us and come up with a way how we can do it for ourselves. There's no way. When they first talked about redevelopment, and I heard them talking about redevelopment, and we had all the warehouses on the hill. India Basin didn't have no streets and sidewalks, wasn't nothing down in India Basin. And they was having a conversation about how they was gonna spend $100 million. And my head got to turn. I said, $100 million? $100 million. How can we get some of that? And what portion of that money was gonna be spent on labor? I'm saying, we can get the jobs. If we can get the jobs, we can get some of that $100 million. But what I didn't know, the $100 million was for infrastructure. And all infrastructure means is only streets and sidewalks. It was the furthest thing from my mind. Once they build the streets and sidewalks, the structures was gonna go up. So that $100 million was just a drop in the bucket. But it turned my mind. Because money talk. When people are talking about the money, we need to be thinking about how can we get some of it. Because we can. All we got to do is figure out how we can get it. And just like I figured out back then about the jobs, is no developer. They wanted to build in this community. It didn't tell us, well, you gonna have some jobs. But they didn't manifest. Our unemployment is sky high. What is it gonna take to bring our unemployment down if not jobs? We can't let somebody sing, I'm coming to develop your community, and you people gonna get jobs. And then we don't receive the jobs. We don't know jobs. If we're entitled to jobs, we need to let them know. Well, let's stop the building. What about them jobs we were promised? Here you building already. We even know how much the house is gonna cost. I learned some information. And what they were saying is, we have affordable condominium on the shipyard. Studio. Only one is gonna be affordable. Well, how much is it gonna cost? $160,000. 400 square feet.
Whoa.
400 square feet. No, it wasn't 400 square feet. Yeah, it was 400 square feet. That ain't nothing. And $325 a month for association fee.
Wow.
On top of that. My mind starts saying, well, if the studio is gonna cost that much, how is it gonna be? They didn't want to tell nobody. They don't want nobody to know how much these places they building actually gonna cost. Because in mind is, we can't afford them. But if we can't afford them, who are you? Why are you building? Because you sure ain't building for us. The point I'm saying is this. San Francisco is a tourist attraction, just like Hawaii. Only thing is, they ain't got the beaches and things like Hawaii has. San Francisco is one of the highest cities in the United States of America to live in. But we just need to understand that.
I think it's the high.
Ain't no thing us being in San Francisco and don't know that. Okay? So it's gonna boil down to how we gonna stay in San Francisco. If we don't get ourselves together, our minds together, our heads together, we gotta understand the Hawaiians live right here in San Francisco because they can't afford to live in Hawaii. Where we gonna go? Point I'm saying, it ain't about going nowhere. It's about how can we get the money? How can we train our children? How can we set the type of examples, like the example I said, I remember when we bought our home on top of the hill. We had a Section 8, we was paying $1,008 for the Section 8. We bought a first-time home buyer's home up by the sundial. That home, our mortgage, was $975. I'm scratching my head. I'm saying, wait a minute, now we paying less for a mortgage than we were paying for the Section 8. We should have been had a house. The thing is, the things we do not know is what holds us back. And then at the same time, we were combining our incomes. I think our income at that time, that was 15 years ago, it was $124,000. I'm like, no wonder why we can afford to buy this home and anything else we desire. The reason why, because we planned to upgrade our economical standards, and we did. Right now, we own a beautiful home in Pittsburgh. Our children are professionals. They earn more money than we. But that's what our goals have to be. That's the reason why I'm saying that we have to have a strategy. I'm gonna sum it up. I'm gonna end this. I'm just gonna say what I've seen in Hunters Point. I came up in a drug-free community. I can show you pictures of brothers, and you can look at them and know what none of them drug addicts, because they didn't have drugs in this community. Not until affirmative action. As soon as affirmative action came in, and our brothers went into community jobs and PG&E jobs and all those jobs that we couldn't have at first, when them doors opened up, so that the drugs flow in. So I'm saying every step we have taken, there have been obstacles put before us. But I stand here by the grace of God, because I overcame all the obstacles, okay? But I lost so many friends and so many loved ones. I don't take what they do to us lightly. I know I can't raise up and go get me an AK-45, whatever, and strike back in anger. It's not about being angry. It's about knowing what we face with and knowing that we have minds that we can overcome. And I don't mean overcome talking out the side of our neck. I mean overcome because our minds are so powerful. Anybody that's not as smart as us cannot outdo us. My son, when he first started as a political activist, I had to tone him down a little bit. He had a lot of anger in him. And I told my son, I said, son, you can say anything you want to say. You just have to be articulate about how you see it. You can't say it in a way that's going to have them striking back at you. Because that ain't good strategy. That's foolishness. You have to know who your enemy is. And you have to have a plan how you going to deceive him. Because while he's thinking that you stupid, you planning your strategy. And you don't do it in a way where he can prepare for it. You do it behind closed doors. You plan every move you're going to make. You use his stupidity. Him underestimating us, use that against him. Because that's the worst thing you can do. Because you didn't underestimate a king. It's reclaiming his throne. And I don't mean financially. It's in our bloodline. When we begin to identify how important we are as a people, that's our treasure right there. And no one can stop us. Because if you don't know how I feel about something, it ain't nothing you can do about it. I can be his father. It ain't nothing you can do about it. All I got to do is be his father. And realize how important he is. He's not as important to me as my little grandson now. But as we become aware of these things, nothing can stop us. It's not up to them to care about my son. It's up to me. So I just want to end it. I do want my son, before he sums things up, to talk about what's going to be next. I think it's important for us to think about how to get on top of these dollars. There's billions of dollars coming through. When I was coming up, it was a couple of million. Now they talking about billions. Now we figured out how to get the money. It's nothing that they constructed out here that our company wasn't a part of building, including this library, the shopping center, the majority of the homes on the hill. I mean, we participated in building just about anything because we would not allow them to build it without us. Now that same strategy can continue to apply. We just have to rethink it, rework it, and re-execute it. Because like I tell somebody, no matter what obstacles you put before us, it ain't over with yet. If we got to where we are today, there's no limit to how far we can do, but we got to bring in more people. We got to bring in more leaders. Sorry, sir, I didn't want to be long with you.
Can y'all make some noise for the elder?
Yes, sir. I want everybody to know I ain't that much of an elder. No, I'll be turning 70 years old this year. And I don't take it lightly because I got a lot of wisdom and knowledge that comes along with those years and a lot of accomplishments that I am very proud of, especially when it comes to the businesses that we have established right in this community. We just closed down the Dollar Store More, and I was co-founder in that business, you know, but the reason why, because of lack of foot traffic. We don't have a foot traffic like you got on Valencia Gardens, like you got in the Western Addition. Because a lot of our seniors are scared even to walk on 3rd Street, and we have to change that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
So
sir.
we got 25 minutes before we gotta get out of here. So,
I'm
we
Dennis.
got 2 speakers. We got QEMC. We got Dennis Bishop Jr. Y'all make some noise, man.
Bishop family?
Yeah, yeah.
Curly Bishop?
That's my grandfather.
Wow. Yeah, we go way back.
Yeah.
That's why.
Before you open the store.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, wow. That's why I kind of connect with you the same about here.
So, I just wanted to say something quick that I've noticed out here. And you talked about how billions is coming in. And what I've noticed is that there's, Silicon Valley, is responsible for some of the quickest amount of wealth creation in human history. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing that we're not a part of that. I'm a member, I tell them I'm a member of about 120, 130 meetups, and I go there and I'll be the only Black person there in tech. So what I wanted to do, what I'm trying to do right now is use the store and turn it into a workshop space / workshop for kids to come in and learn entrepreneurship and tech skills. So, bring that right here into the community. So, you guys know anybody trying to learn, definitely let me know.
Yes, sir.
I'm A+ in Security Plus certified. I'm working on my CCNA, so if you somebody to help me with that.
Cool, appreciate it.
And is it open like for kids and like say if I wanted to learn some web design and stuff?
It's not just
Cool.
kids. It's, we trying to, anybody who wants to learn. Yes, we targeting the youth because we gotta catch them young.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, that's what I'm working.
Man, definitely got questions.
So, tell us a little bit about your grandfather.
So,
And that whole connection with being self-reliant.
got you. It's a little history behind that. So, and I kind of tell a little backdrop of history. Starting off slavery, we were sharecroppers. And then, we kind of came to the big cities after cotton gin came in and replaced people. We came up to the big cities and came to the shipyards in Detroit and San Francisco and places like that. And kind of, I used to come look at it from the tech side. It was racism too, which gave us the menial jobs. But then when the automation came in and was able to do those menial jobs, we were the first to go. So I always see it as like us being, if we were kind of getting more of those tech skills or those higher level skills, it would put us in a better economic position. And so, and then you have the conditions that you have now. The thing about my grandfather is he grew up, so his great great grandfather, they were kept in slavery past the proclamation. And so they sued and got land. And so he grew up as a landowner. He had an ownership mentality. He was always like, that's kind of where I kind of get it from. Like I want to be an owner of something. And so his grandfather and his father, they owned their own land. They didn't do shit. They had it, and they were Indian slaves. They weren't slaves by white people. They were enslaved by Indians.
Oh man.
So they also didn't have kind of that dynamic going on either. So
Could you tell us what tribe?
I don't.
Okay. I know about that history.
I'm getting history from my auntie. She was telling me stuff. So they had this attitude, like, my grandfather said his dad called cracker to his face. I was like, oh, yeah. He was like, yeah, he had that attitude. So he had that, and so what we trying to do to kind of continue his legacy is use this property and stuff that we inherited, and really try to give back to the community.
Yes, sir.
So he had sued for his land.
My great grandfather, they sued and got land, and we still have it in Arkansas. Still have it to this day. So it's about 100 something.
All right, so before we got who we coming up to. Can you tell us just some of the things that you're experiencing, in the tech environment, and how it applies to our struggle today?
just that it's not a lot, it's not enough of us there. I think with technology, we can do so much. I think so many ideas I have as far as helping us to achieve like economic independence and sustainability in communities. But it's just not enough of us in that area and doing those things. Hardware, software, robotics, and all that type of stuff. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm talking what I'm talking, because I see the potential. I see that we're not there. I'm like, man, these cats over here, they get money thrown around ideas. It's ideas. We went to it's an incubator, and it's about maybe 20 startups. And one of my classmates' girlfriend who worked there, she was giving some tools. And she told me none of them had, and they all was funded. So I'm like, these guys got funded off of ideas. And none of them making no money? No, ideas. So.
And what an incubator mean, like incubator?
So incubator, they take startups and give them advisement and structure so that they can, build their company.
Okay.
Make it profitable, but it's crazy. I think we need to tap into that being part of it.
We definitely got to link up after this.
One last thing. This being also in IT, even with the knowledge and certification, it's still a lot harder for us to break in to that field. Because, just recently, Reverend Jesse Jackson has been out here meeting with Google, meeting with eBay, because there are Black people that are qualified, some even more than qualified, to enter into this field, and they're not being considered. It's one of the reasons why, I'm working towards my CCNA, because when I got my A+, I thought I was going to get a job. And then when I got my security plus, I thought I was going to get a job. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. Every company, and now it's coming to the point where in order to be in business, you have to be informationally sound as far as your network is concerned. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to trade internationally whatsoever. So even the smallest business is going to need some type of IT infrastructure.
Wow.
And here's the funny thing. It was a Nigerian man that built the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
And it was an African-American man that has the first original 9 patents on the personal computer. Wow. But yet, there are not enough of us in this industry, even though we create the vehicles to make it go to where it is today.
That's kind of why I do. I'm trying to do what I'm trying to do.
You're a role model.
I think we need to take ownership.
That's what we need to do. Take ownership, and create our own structure within our own community where we're not dependent upon the white man's structure. Because that's the way I look at it. It's like you are like a trailblazer, and I'm all about education and knowledge, man. Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to, negotiate with family and aunties and uncles and stuff, but that's where we headed.
Philip Imagwali.
Yeah.
Oh, the Nigerian.
Yeah.
He's Philip Imagwali. He's a professor at the University of Oregon.
Okay.
He mastered in electrical engineering. But at the time in the 70s, when computer technology was only used by, as far as networks were concerned, by universities and hospitals of that nature, it was all based on 8-bit technology. And what Philip Imagwali figured out is that he can go faster and push information. His analogy was he can harness 56,400 chickens, can be faster and more powerful when harnessed than 8 oxen.
So instead of 8-bit technology, 56K technology, which is what the World Wide Web is based on. Yeah.
And an African American created the cell phone too.
Yeah, I heard about that one.
All right, so without further ado, we'll bring up our man.
Yes, sir.
Drop his science, mathematics, you know what I mean? Close the shop out.
Man, much respect. Peace to God, peace to God. Woo, man, I tell you, man, it's been a crazy day today. You know, I work for the homeless outreach team, Department of Public Health, and like, you know, they have the Gay Day parade down there, and it's like, it's all, I got to a car accident at 1 o'clock, and I was dealing with the whole situation of the police at 4:30, man, like by 4, and I just got, you know, smashed out here, almost got into another accident. But, you know, God is good, and we're here to build off some science. You know, thank you for inviting me here. You know, knowledge and wisdom, history, learning, education is a passion of mine. You know, I'm like, you know, it's an addiction to me. I'm up at night, you know, 2, 3 in the morning sometimes, just on the internet, constantly browsing, you know, and yeah, I got to give you a shout out. I remember meeting you when I worked for ICANN. Let's do the workshops down here on Everett Street for the Inner City Adolescent Network. And I asking you about the platinum plaques up in the store. So like, yeah, this is most definitely a very, very knowledgeable elder here. Today, I got a really short, concise historical lesson. Just to give you a little bit of background about the mathematics that I build upon, and I call them mathematics. I use a 5% of structure. My spirituality is basically Rastafarian based. The knowledge I'm building on is academically based. In other words, like this is knowledge and wisdom you could take it to Stanford and bing, 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 bing with the white boys, and they might not agree with you, but you gonna see them turn red and like, you know, because the thing is, the truth is out there, but it's hidden. It's hidden. You know, of course, you got all outright lies too. You still got to deal with history, but the truth has always been out there. Anybody ever heard of Stolen Legacy? Book called Stolen Legacy. Very iconic book. George M. Jackson. Now the thing is, when I first started learning about my history and my culture, and I kind of emphasize on that, to see today. We're here in the Baby Hunters Point, one of the last bastions of African-American family, neighborhood, and culture in San Francisco on the day that they're celebrating the Gay Pride Day. And it's huge down there. It's not even the main day yet, you know. And the thing is, it's like, I want to salute those of us who've come out to celebrate our history and our culture, because it's, you know, I seen so many young brothers and sisters down there, you know, and I see them, you know, I see the young girls down here, man. It's like, you know, I say, girl, you know, you down here, you know, you trying to catch me. You ain't trying to catch, you know, something. You got the lipstick on and titties hanging out, you know what I'm saying? You know, but this is what our youth are embracing and everything. And like, don't get me wrong, man, you know, have fun, do what you do, like whatever, you know, float your boat and wiggle your wiggle. But the thing is, we can't lose sight of our history and our culture, because a lot of our younger generation are deaf, dumb, and blind. You know, like no knowledge of self. And this is what I formulate my whole being on. Especially, I've worked with a lot of Anglos throughout my work career. As many of you know, I'm a hip hop artist also, but also I've been in social work for quite some time. And you know, working around Anglos and those outside of our culture, you gotta know how to deal with them. But one of the best ways, like when you know yourself and your history, and also you gotta know their history too. You know, because I give them the riot act about themselves. You know, it's like, man, y'all was banging rocks together up in Germany, up in the, you know, up in the caves, man, when we was flossing down now, like in linen and silk. And that's just the truth of the matter, you know. And a lot of even white academics will tell you now today, civilization is based from out of Egypt and Nubia. And actually, they're trying to tell you that Nubia is younger than Egypt, but Nubia is older than Egypt. And this is information. This is how they hide our information. I had to pay the New York Times like about $5 for like a copy of a microfilm from a 1979 newspaper article they did when they found the incense burner in Nubia. This is the oldest symbol of a monarchy. Monarchy meaning a rulership by a king. Like first time in the world, not in Asia, not in Europe, not Egypt, Nubia. And when they study the Nubian artifacts, they see that the symbols that you later saw in Egypt was already in Nubia. You know, and this is what I'm saying, the truth is out there, because Herodotus, when you read Herodotus' book, he tells you the Ethiopians say that Egypt was one of their colonies. You know, that broke off from them and thought they was more flossier. You know what I'm saying? You know, Egypt was like, we floss on y'all now. You know, but technically, Ethiopia is the foundation, and that's what the Greeks call Nubia. Ethiopia meaning sunburn, and we're gonna get into that. There are many different names for like dark, you know, the N-bomb word, you know, that we use that GA ending and the white folks put the ER on, you know, come from the Niger. You can, if you're into the Bible, you got Simon Niger and some other characters even in the Bible, they use that term. It means black. That's a Latin word for black. You know, a Greek word for black, you got two of them. So you got Ethiopia for sunburn, and then you got the word Moor, you know, and I see one of our members of the Moorish temple here, you know what I'm saying, Brother Jamil. Yeah, Moorish, you built a Moorish. Yeah, most definitely, I stand corrected, but like, you know, Jamil's one of the first moles that I met in San Francisco. It's a few of them, you know, and most definitely wanted to a lot more back east. I got family back east, man. You just run into them. You know, and that's why those brothers are tighter back east. You know, we look down south and back east, especially in this rap game, like, man, why do they work together better than us? Because their culture is tighter. And our culture as a whole, African-American culture, has been destroyed. You know, and we've been building it from scratch. And that's really why we can't get it together, because our culture has been destroyed. We are at war. This system is diametrically opposed to us. And it's a subliminal, subversive war sometimes, or sometimes it's totally out and out aggressive, like police shooting people in the back, Kindergarten Plaza, you know what I'm saying? You know, Cameron Boyd, Alex Nieto, like, you know, and then the cats from San Francisco, you know, not to mention all over the nation. We are at a war, and the thing is this: having your knowledge and your wisdom and your history is a key. Like, I want to pass these out. I'll let's see. And if somebody needs another one, because I like working with visuals, and unfortunately I couldn't bring my laptop today. You know what I'm saying? My man got me that. I have to bring my laptop today. You know, and so I like working with visuals, and so this is a handout right here of just some things I'm gonna go over, building off on some of our history. So, and I got some more. You know, should I move pass back?
Oh, you also
Zipping Zoom.
This is Black History Music Month.
Oh man, all right, man. You know, man. And so most definitely, yeah, I'm gonna talk about some of that hip hop history, man, especially the Bay Area hip hop history. So let me dive in. Now, first of all, a lot of you know that the black man is the original man. The genetic Adam and Eve were found in Europe. Excuse me, genetic Adam and Eve were found in Africa. Genetic Adam and Eve were found in Africa. Now, when I say genetic African Adam and Eve, I'm talking about Homo sapiens sapiens. I'm using scientific terms. I'm a spiritual person too, and I'm not trying to conflict with anybody's biblical beliefs about creationism. If you're creationist, that's cool. But science is simply the study of God's work. It's all it means, you know. And when people say, yeah, man began in Africa, and like white people like to agree with you on it, they always want to talk about Lucy. Lucy was a hominid. In other words, Lucy was not fully human. But Homo sapiens sapiens, that means fully man, human, originated in Africa. Fully cognitive man originated in Africa. They have articles and research about you being an IT brother, and man, I like to email this to you. You find this interesting. It's an article saying that Africans were the first techie nerds. You know, because we the first man, so our brain cells had that explosion, making like advanced tools and see, Neanderthal man is the only hominid that evolved in Europe, in Asia. A Neanderthal man doesn't come from Africa. In fact, everybody from outside of Africa has Neanderthal DNA. Everybody from outside of Africa. We African Americans might got Neanderthal DNA because we got some white folk up in us and some Indian up in us, some other people. But like pure Africans, no Neanderthal DNA. Neanderthal was what you call a human cousin. And he was more primitive than Homo sapiens. When we came up there in Europe, like they say, humans came into Europe, all of a sudden Neanderthal slowly died out because we, for whatever reason, we obviously bred with them, but also we outcompeted with them. We were sharper. They were stronger than us, because when you look at Neanderthal bones, they weren't tall as us, but they were stockier and stronger because they were built for ice age climate. And this is why white people and Asians have lighter skin, because they evolved in the ice age climate. Because during the ice age, not only was it cold, it was dark. It was like, it didn't get lighter than twilight. If anybody's ever been up toward the North Pole, Alaska, the further north you get, like it's dim all the time up there, imagine thousands of years like that. That's what the ice age is. And this is what this whole climatical change, man, we might end up in something messed up like that. And that's a very hard period of human history that we have to survive through. So like Africans, we are survivors. So after living out of Africa, and this is around about 80,000 years ago, 70,000 years ago, we went into Europe and Asia, and then eventually made it to Australia. And even Black people, we're the first in the Americas too. Before you had Native American types, we were the first 50,000 years ago. They like to use the term Australoid.